there seem to be a bunch of interesting food system realignments. This is kind of an old story that over time, this industry has become at the farm level, much more integrated and much more concentrated. I think one thing that's maybe a little newer that's interesting to watch is what we're seeing is a lot of forward and backward integration, maybe among both the packing and retailing sector, that I think will be interesting to watch. So again, just a few headlines for you, but companies like Purdue Farms on the poultry side of things launching a direct-to-consumer effort. You have companies like Walmart trying to get into the beef packing business. Costco got into the chicken packing business. Tyson's appointed a new CEO, which came from the tech world. So I think lots of really interesting things here. You got retailers trying to integrate backwards into the processing sector. You have processors saying, well, I can integrate forwards into the retailing sector. So I think this will be a really interesting dynamic to watch over time. And I think one question to ask is what's causing this? And it maybe circles back to what I mentioned at the beginning. I think increasing pressure to focus on sustainability issues, not necessarily because consumers are willing to pay more for it, but that investors are asking for more documentation and commitments of companies. And as a company, if you can't, there's only so much you can do within your four walls and within your core business. And then you got to reach back into the supply chain to make some of those commitments. So I think some of what we're seeing is an attempt to try to control supply, is maybe a strong word, is secure supply to have an efficient quantity, but also to think about quality issues and take advantage of potential information that's coming about through digital ag, ability to track and trace information and carry that information throughout the supply chain, I think is really becoming increasingly important. And again, that ability to respond to consumers' demands about where food is coming from and whether it has particular quality traits, I think is also dovetailing in with this ability to track and convey information along the supply chain in ways that we haven't seen maybe as much of in the past. So to conclude here, just maybe a few other kind of issues to keep an eye out on. Animal disease is always something I know in this industry you watch. We've of course been watching China for a while now, and as African swine fever has even spread to some places in Europe. I think the reason I mention it here too is people have asked me sometimes, particularly for people that are working in the plant-based meat space, is, Jayson, is there going to be some inflection point where consumers really change their mind and decide they want all the lab-grown meat and plant-based meat? And of course, I say I don't know. And but what are the kinds of things that could lead people to that? Well, having come out of a human pandemic, I am a little worried about how consumers might respond to a big animal disease outbreak in light of all the attention and all the fear and all the concern we've just had over a human spread illness. And I think people might be very sensitive to how some of those issues might play out. And so on top of just the normal concerns we have with animal disease, I think that's something I'd keep an eye on. The pandemic really pushed us towards more e-commerce in food, and I think that's not going to go away. It's going to continue to accelerate. I did a survey maybe 6 months ago, asked consumers how many of them had bought meat online in the past month, and I think I don't have the exact statistic on the top of my head, but it was about a quarter or more that said yes to that. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for, and that may open up some opportunities for all kinds of forms of reaching the consumer that maybe have been less traditional in the past. So that potentially means more food's going to pass the traditional grocery store and reach consumers in other ways, either direct delivery to their homes through Amazon, or even maybe grocery stores delivering groceries to consumers' doorsteps without it even going in the store at all. So I think even a few grocery stores have been toying with these ideas of micro fulfillment centers, on the outskirts of town. I think that'll be interesting to watch see what that does to grocery stores in the future in terms of their size and offerings. I think, I think there still is a preference to pick fresh items like meat out in person, but will that always be the case? Hard to tell. Hopefully, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're seeing a big, demand increase for food through food service, but there could be still a shakeup there as we move out of this, and maybe as traditional, some restaurants have gone out of business and may look different whenever we come out. And I think, there's still some lingering, issues and attitudes that are hanging over from the disruptions that we saw in our food supply chain, and at least among some segments of consumers, there has been, I think, an increase in demand for local, more direct farm delivery to consumers. My own suspicion is that will still remain a fairly small part of the overall segment, but one that there is going to probably be some demand growth.